Visualize a towering 6'3" snowboarder, decked out in national gear, standing tall at the 2002 Winter Games. Jump ahead 23 years, and that same golden boy is now topping the federal most wanted list with a $15 million price tag on his life. He stands accused of orchestrating a billion-dollar underworld syndicate, moving 60 metric tons of illicit powder annually. But the twist in this story is absolutely wild. Ryan Wedding's collapse wasn't triggered by a complex sting operation or a rat in his inner circle. No, this modern-day kingpin got too arrogant, too comfortable, and slipped up, leading to his arrest just days ago in Mexico City. Don't click away, because I'm breaking down exactly how a national hero morphed into a global villain and how his own ego destroyed him. Ryan James Wedding arrived in 1981 in Thunder Bay, Ontario, a city buried under snow for half the year. His family wasn't just into skiing, they practically ran the mountain, with his grandfather owning the resort and his uncle directing the school. Forget the hard knock life narrative. Wedding was born into a dynasty of champions and wealthy entrepreneurs. His father was a veteran of the slopes, and Ryan was strapped into skis before he could even form a complete sentence. The Wedding clan was royalty in the Ontario winter sports scene. They didn't just participate, they led the charge. Mount Baldy was a multi-generational legacy, not just a business. Ryan grew up with access to elite coaching and facilities that other aspiring kids could only fantasize about. When the family relocated to Coquitlam near Vancouver, a 12-year-old Ryan found his true calling on a snowboard. The boy had zero sense of self-preservation. Bob Allison, who was building a top-tier Canadian squad, noted that young Ryan operated without a shred of fear, while his peers hesitated, terrified of wiping out. Ryan charged forward with reckless abandon. By 2002, at barely 20 years of age, he grabbed the brass ring every athlete chases. He was selected to wear the Canadian colors at the Salt Lake City Olympics in Utah. This was his big break. Decades of sweat, grinding, and sacrifice had culminated in this high-stakes moment. The nation demanded greatness, especially following the drama and glory of Ross Ribagliati's '98 gold medal run. Ryan was tapped as the heir apparent to the country's snowboarding throne. He possessed the technique, the guts, and the killer instinct coaches crave in a champion, but Ryan soon did the math. Olympic glory doesn't pay for the high-rolling life he lusted after. A 9-to-5 or a coaching gig wasn't going to cut it. He craved exotic supercars, 5-figure timepieces, and luxury penthouses. He wanted to live like a king, and he knew a regular paycheck was never going to make that happen. Working security at Vancouver hotspots, Ryan began rubbing elbows with the very elements he was hired to eject: shadowy figures, traffickers, and heavies with deep criminal ties. An ex-girlfriend watched him shift from a humble athlete to a guy obsessed with Prada kicks and Breitling bling. Early 2000s Vancouver was a ticking time bomb, with gang turf wars over green product turning the streets violent. Gunfire was erupting in nightclubs, and cops were raiding bars, tossing out anyone who looked sketchy. The signs were everywhere. Ryan had touched fame, but now he hungered for something more lucrative: power, fear, and respect. After ditching college with a $250,000 loan from his dad, Ryan flipped a property in Maple Ridge, plunging the cash into a flashy pad in Westwood Plateau, complete with arcade games and a pro racing rig. His garage was stuffed with expensive toys, snow machines, a Ducati bike, and a BMW M5. Yet, house flipping couldn't sustain that level of excess forever. So, Ryan pivoted to a venture that promised massive returns, total secrecy, and zero legality. A buddy held the deed to a spot in Maple Ridge dubbed 18 Carat Farms. But they weren't planting vegetables, they were farming a serious cash crop. Insiders claim Ryan and his cohort were overseeing a colossal grow-op with 8,000 plants across the compound. This wasn't a hobby, it was industrial-scale production. They poured a fortune into top-tier cultivation tech, advanced watering rigs, and blazing industrial lights designed to push production to the absolute limit. The goal was simple: grow the kind of top-shelf product that fetches a king's ransom on the streets, whether it's sold north of the border or down in the States. This wasn't some amateur basement project. Every 2 weeks, Ryan made the trek to the site, personally checking the crop and organizing shipments to buyers all over B.C. The cash flow was staggering, easily raking in six figures a year, and likely much higher. Even the lowest guesses placed their monthly take at over $100,000, with profit spreads that would turn any legal C.E.O. green with envy. Bringing in a fortune wasn't just possible, it was happening. However, this success is exactly where Ryan slipped up and committed his first fatal error. The facility was burning through 2,000 kilowatt hours every single month, a massive power spike that no ordinary warehouse could ever justify. Up in British Columbia, those kinds of energy surges are like lighting a flare for authorities, hunting down illicit grow houses. The Mounties weren't flying blind. They had fine-tuned their strategies for sniffing out these hidden plantations. Investigators started matching grid consumption stats against building ownership files, hunting for any address, sucking down the kind of juice needed to run a blinding array of horticultural lamps. By the summer of 2006, the RCMP had 18 specific locations, including cat farms, squarely in their crosshairs. They watched, they listened, and they quietly stacked their deck, getting ready to kick down the doors. When the raid finally went down, they uncovered a fortress loaded firearms secured in a safe, 6,800 plants, and 86 pounds of finished product worth a staggering $10 million on the street. To date, nobody in Maple Ridge had ever seen a cultivation ring of this magnitude. It was front-page news across the province. But then came the shocker. Despite the mountain of proof, the cops couldn't pin a single charge on Ryan. Their only thread connecting him to the scene was a snitch. And in court, that wasn't enough to make a verdict stick. You have to understand the scale between 1997 and 2003. B.C. Authorities looked into nearly 25,000 different grow sites, but they were completely overwhelmed by the tsunami of illicit activity. The game plan changed from locking people up to just dismantling the gear and moving to the next target. The courts simply couldn't handle the load. Ryan had miraculously escaped a career-ending bust, but rather than counting his blessings and quitting, his ego swelled. He truly believed he was invincible. Fast forward to the autumn of 2007, and Ryan was crying poor to anyone who would listen. He torched about $500,000 on a disastrous property scheme and blew another $300,000 on a narcotic transaction that went south. Yet, instead of cutting his losses, he decided to raise the stakes. He linked up with Hassan Sharini, a Persian-Canadian operator who had been on law enforcement radar since the late 90s. Sharini was leagues above your average corner hustler. This guy was plugged into elite global syndicates capable of ghosting funds and contraband across national lines without tripping a single alarm. Through Sharini, Ryan unlocked a completely new level of the game: the Hawala network. It's an ancient financial web dating back to the 8th century, running entirely on honor and handled by shadow bankers known as Hawaladars. The process is invisible. A client gives cash and a commission to a local agent, a secret code is established, and that password is sent to a partner agent in the destination city. The recipient gets paid out from the partner's pocket, and the agents settle the debt later through complex swaps or physical cash mules. Ryan pitched Sharini on a major powder purchase down in California, scraping together roughly $340,000 to fund it. That cash pile was basically every dime he had left after his financial disasters. This wasn't just a business move, it was a Hail Mary pass. Ryan was gambling his entire life on a single score. Following sit-downs with associates linked to the Russian mob, they greenlit a plan to acquire 24 kilos from a source in Los Angeles. The logic was straightforward. If this initial run succeeded, they'd open a permanent pipeline and flood the market. Bringing in the Russians was the key, as they offered a gateway to logistics channels that had been smuggling product and laundering cash for generations. These guys weren't playing in the sandbox anymore. They were dealing with seasoned pros tied to global syndicates. But the second they touched down in L.A., the FBI was already on them, tracking every step, call, and handshake. June 10, 2008, the trio touched down in Southern California, a Russian, a Persian, and a Canadian. They certainly weren't in town to visit Disneyland or catch a tan. They were hunting for 24 bricks of pure white, meeting a contact they thought was XKGB, with deep ties to Colombian producers. In reality, that spy was a federal snitch wired for sound, and the product was government-issued bait, part of a massive sting designed to decapitate these international rings. Ryan had never played for stakes this high, and to the federal agents listening in on the wire, his amateur status screamed through every rookie move he made. He never verified the source of the product, a survival instinct any seasoned smuggler possesses. Worse, he showed up in the flesh instead of using a cutout, exposing himself to catastrophic risk. When the Russian heavy, Yuri Trafimov, demanded to see the cash up front, Ryan stalled, claiming the funds were tangled in the Hawala underground. That didn't sit well with Trafimov, a man whose reputation for brutality terrified even the hardest felons. Desperate to keep the play alive, they struck a deal move, one brick as a test run, with the bulk to follow. The feds had already flooded the zone, planting eyes throughout the airport and perimeter. They were coiled to strike. But when the script flipped, the surveillance teams had to scramble and improvise on the fly. June 13, 2008, Ryan and Shirini hit a Persian rug shop in San Diego that moonlighted as a cash broker, standard operating procedure in this game. Plenty of legit storefronts in these neighborhoods wash money for folks dodging the banking system. They grabbed a bundle of 120 grand, wrapped in newsprint. The deal was live, but the second 17,000 changed hands for that single brick, the trap snapped shut. Agents swarmed. Ryan was slapped in cuffs, stepping out of his San Diego hotel, unaware the feds had tapes of every incriminating word. The takedown was surgical and fast. Suddenly, the Olympian was staring down the barrel of a federal indictment carrying a mandatory 10-year stretch. His partners folded instantly, cutting deals to save their skins. But Ryan, he kept his mouth shut. Agent Brett Keena later told Rolling Stone the guy was absolute ice. Miranda rights read. Silence followed. He gave them zero. His vibe was clear. You aren't getting a damn thing from me. That arrogance was his signature, a fatal flaw that would carve the dark path stretching out before him. The gavel came down guilty of conspiracy. 10 years was the starting line. But at the sentencing, Ryan delivered the performance of a lifetime, channeling the discipline of his athletic prime. He looked the judge dead in the eye, selling a story of deep, soul-searching regret. This isn't who I am, he pleaded. My only goal now is to redeem my name and rebuild. Sports taught me there are no do-overs, he said. But I am begging you for one right now. Hook, line, and sinker. The court swallowed the act whole, granting a massive break. 48 months. With time served, he'd be walking free in under 3 years instead of the decade he deserved. But the judge was blind to the truth. Ryan wasn't planning to go straight. He was planning to level up. For 2 years, he rotted in the Metropolitan Correctional Center, a holding tank for federal targets. It was packed with cartel foot soldiers and seasoned smugglers awaiting their fate, especially the border runners. For Ryan, this wasn't punishment. It was higher education in the underworld. He rubbed shoulders with Sinaloa affiliates and heavy hitters from the Colombian supply chain. We aren't talking corner boys. These were the architects of major money laundering schemes. Logistics experts who knew how to move tons of product across borders without blinking. Agent Keena later confessed the bitter truth: prison just built a better criminal. He walked in a novice and networked with the elite, even from inside a cage. Ryan ran a tight ship, applying that same relentless drive he used for the Olympics. He juggled 5 different girlfriends on the outside, tasking them with everything from washing his ride to collecting debts. He kept the gears turning, ensuring his contacts knew he was still a player in the game. He was captured on calls bragging to his boys about the goldmine of connections he was striking inside. He wasn't bluffing. He was curating a Rolodex of criminals to launch an empire the moment he walked. He studied the dark arts of the trade encrypted apps that couldn't be tapped, washing cash through crypto and ghost corporations, and the Holy Grail, forging alliances with the Mexican cartels for direct supply and muscle. Prison didn't fix Ryan Wedding. It handed him a PhD in becoming a drug lord, schooled by the globe's top-tier felons. Ryan touched back down in Canada in 2011 and planted his flag in Montreal, a metropolis where the narcotics game was essentially the Wild West. The iron grip of the traditional Italian syndicates was rusting away, leaving a vacuum for ambitious freelancers to exploit. An operator could run plays for the Sinaloa outfit completely unaware of rival cells operating just a few zip codes over. For a man with Ryan's appetite for power, Montreal in the early 2010s was nothing short of paradise. The harbor served as a critical artery, pumping goods directly between European markets and South American suppliers. While shadow pipelines were already in place, the authorities were too busy hunting old-school mobsters to notice the rising breed of global kingpins. Come February 2014, Ryan pulled a legal maneuver and filed for insolvency, painting a picture of destitution, swearing he was jobless and surviving entirely on handouts from his relatives. His official declaration pleaded that years behind bars had crippled his earning potential, leaving him unable to cover even basic debts as they matured. Legally, he was a pauper, yet he resided in a secure luxury compound in Coquitlam with his spouse, driving a leased Ford F-350 behemoth while reporting zero revenue. But behind closed doors, a colossal scheme was already grinding into motion. January 2015 saw a covert agent going by Joe fly into Montreal to sit down with Filipos Colaros, a direct conduit to the infamous Joaquin Guzman, better known as El Chapo. During their rendezvous at a local dining establishment, Colaros announced the arrival of the shot caller. Right on cue, Ryan Wedding strolled in and casually identified himself as a heavy hitter in the powder trade. The agent immediately recognized he wasn't facing a rookie. This was a veteran player who had turned past failures into lessons. Wedding drilled him on maritime payload limits and charted specific navigation lanes, factoring in meteorological shifts and police rotations to engineer a master plan that made his prior stunts look like child's play. The strategy was nothing short of audacious. An oceanic research ship would pick up the product near St. Kitts, then execute a mid-sea handoff to trawlers capable of slipping unnoticed onto the rugged coast of Newfoundland. Once on Canadian soil, the stash would be trucked to key metropolitan hubs and smuggled south across the American frontier. They shook hands on a trial load between 500 and 1,000 kilos of volume, over 20 times the size of the mistake that originally sent Ryan to the pen. For his trouble, Joe negotiated a 25% slice of the cargo's street value, a payout destined to reach the multi-millions. However, on April 20th, 2015, the Mounties dropped the hammer with synchronized raids nationwide, signing 15 warrants, with Ryan Wedding's name at the top of the list. Dubbed Project Harrington, the offensive aimed to sever the narcotic artery pulsating between Mexico and the Great White North. By the time the tactical teams breached his Montreal residence, the bird had already flown the coop. He vanished into Mexico, sheltered by the Sinaloa syndicate, thanks to alliances forged during his incarceration. This marked the metamorphosis of Ryan Wedding from a mediocre peddler into a figure the FBI would eventually brand a contemporary Pablo Escobar, operating from his stronghold south of the border. Wedding constructed a global engine alongside his right-hand man, Andrew Clark, a former Toronto elevator tech who migrated to Mexico in 2022. Clark wasn't merely hired brawn. He was a logistical savant capable of orchestrating intricate movements across international boundaries. They aligned directly with the Sinaloa Federation, which had by then ascended to the throne as the planet's most dominant trafficking entity. The organization furnished security, supply chains, and crucially, the framework required to shuttle colossal tonnage from South to North America. Their highway was high-tech and in a constant state of flux. Product originated in Colombian laboratories, flowed through entrenched cartel arteries in Mexico, and slipped past the U.S. perimeter into Southern California. Utilizing Los Angeles as command central, the selection of LA was entirely calculated. The metropolis offered pre-existing black market channels, alongside a myriad of shipping terminals and airstrips for global distribution. Furthermore, prosecutors alleged the local statutes were lenient, promising softer penalties for anyone intercepted with the white powder. Once in the City of Angels, The inventory was warehoused in safe properties overseen by loyal lieutenants. These weren't rinky-dink setups. They were industrial-grade depots, equipped with surveillance, temperature regulation, and advanced stock tracking. Whenever Wedding or Clark gave the green light for a shipment, the cargo rode north on 18-wheelers, piloted by veteran mules with spotless driving histories and an intimate knowledge of border protocols. The scale of the operation defies belief. Federal authorities assert that Wedding's syndicate was flooding the USA with 60 metric tons of snow every single year. Imagine piling up 40 mid-sized sedans. That is the crushing mass we are talking about here. Even lowballing the street price. This empire was pulling in close to $500 million every single year in raw earnings. You do not shift that kind of inventory without an iron grip and security protocols that rival a government agency. His operation ran on a two-step verification system that would look right at home to any Silicon Valley tech expert. Couriers had to snap pictures of currency bills, using the unique serial strings to verify who was who at every handoff point along the supply line. If those digits did not line up perfectly, the deal was dead, keeping the boys in blue from slipping an undercover agent into the mix. They built a fortress of secrecy where the guys behind the wheel had zero clue where the cargo was actually ending up. The keepers of the safe houses were blind to the supply source, and the finance guys washing the cash never asked where the dirty money originated. By sealing off every department, a single bust could not bring the whole house of cards crashing down. The machine just kept rolling. But God help you if a package went missing or you betrayed the boss. The retaliation was instant and absolutely savage. It was not about the money anymore. It was about striking enough terror into the ranks to keep a billion-dollar machine greased and obedient. Court documents reveal a syndicate that treated taking a life like just another line item on the daily expense report. The kingpin allegedly put out contracts on anyone who fell behind on payments, or anyone who dared steal product or show a hint of attitude, leaving a trail of bodies stretching from Canada all the way down through the States. None of this bloodshed was accidental. It was a cold, calculated billboard warning. Everyone else, what happens when you cross the line? During his stint behind bars, he realized that in the global underworld, the legend of being a monster is worth more than the act itself. Back in November of 2023, the boss supposedly greenlit the execution of a hauler he suspected of pinching 300 kilos of product from a run. That missing inventory was a massive hit, wiping out millions of dollars in pure profit. But letting a thief walk away would make him look soft to the rest of the crew. Unfortunately, the cleanup crew made a horrific mistake. On the 20th of November, 2023, they kicked in the door of a rental near the Brampton border. Thinking they had the driver's family cornered, what they found was a nightmare scenario, stumbling upon a completely innocent family with zero ties to the criminal world. It was a 57-year-old visitor from India and his 55-year-old wife. They had been guests at their children's home for 4 months and were already packed to fly back home come January. That very morning on the 20th, the father shared a haunting sentiment with his daughter, saying that if they did not speak then, they might never speak again, and promising that his last thought on earth would be how much he adored her above all else. Later that night, just before 11:30, the daughter was winding down when she spotted a stranger lurking in the hall. In a split second, she witnessed her father crumble under the hail of bullets and heard her mother's terrified shriek, followed by a chilling silence broken only by the rhythmic cracking of the firearm. The father was gone before he hit the floor. The mother took 22 rounds to the body, fighting for her life in the ICU for 2 weeks before finally succumbing to her injuries. The daughter miraculously survived being hit 13 times, though she carries a permanent reminder, a slug stuck in her spine that surgeons cannot touch without risking total paralysis. These people were civilians in the truest sense, completely removed from the underworld. They were casualties of a sloppy hit job, targeted simply because the shooters had the wrong house number. Fast forward to April 1st, 2024, and another body dropped in Niagara Falls. A lieutenant named Andrew Clark supposedly called in the strike, tapping a trigger man named Malik Cunningham, who went by the ironic handle, Mr. Perfect. The mark this time was a guy named Randy Fader, a 29-year-old dual citizen who was gunned down point-blank in his own driveway. It turns out Clark had been grooming the shooter specifically for this kind of wet work. The moment the shooter walked out of the Toronto South Jail, his handler put him on a plane straight to Mexico, enrolling him in a cartel-style boot camp where he mastered everything from handguns to sniper rifles, using drills ripped straight from Special Forces manuals. Once he was a certified killing machine, they shipped him back north with a hit list and a price tag for every head. The opening contract on the table promised a payout of $100,000. The rates went up from their $200,000 for a realtor on the West Coast, double that for a crew in Toronto, and a cool $1 million for a high-value target over in Dubai. But the boss was about to make his boldest move yet, a decision that would eventually burn his whole kingdom to the ground. After the feds slapped him with an indictment in 2024, a government informant was lined up to take the stand. The snitch, identified later as Jonathan Garcia, was an inner circle player who knew where all the bodies were buried and exactly how the money moved. According to the district attorneys handling the case, allegedly, it was his own legal counsel who planted the seed, suggesting that if Victor A. were to suddenly vanish, the entire case extradition included would crumble to dust. If those accusations hold water, it stands as one of the most twisted betrayals of the legal oath we've seen in modern history. Wedding didn't just listen. He took that dark suggestion and ran with it, straight into a nightmare scenario. He slapped a price tag of $5 million on the man's life, spinning a complex web of killers that showcased just how far his global influence stretched. Leveraging a Canadian platform known as Dirty News, he leaked images of the target and his spouse, turning the hunt into a public spectacle to flush them out. This wasn't amateur hour, it was a high-tech, military-grade manhunt. The team deployed an $18,500 tracking device to shadow every step the witness took. Snipers with cameras were positioned nearby, ready to capture the hit on film as grim verification for the payroll. The sheer scale of money and strategy poured into this one hit showed that Wedding was no longer just a small-time pot farmer. He was a titan of the underworld. It all went down on January 31st, 2025. As Jonathan Abedo Garcia sat down for a meal at an eatery in Medellin, Colombia, an assassin strolled in and fired 5 rounds into him right there in the open. The brazen daylight attack, with bystanders watching, screamed of a hitman who knew he was untouchable. The smoke hadn't even cleared before. Wedding was circulating a gruesome snapshot of the aftermath to his inner circle, serving as both a receipt for the job and a chilling warning to anyone thinking about snitching. It went beyond simple homicide. This was calculated terror, meant to silence voices and shatter the legal process across borders. Yet, this is exactly where Ryan Wedding slipped up, sealing his own fate. Complacency set in, he started feeling invincible, even with his face plastered on the FBI's most wanted list and a $15 million bounty on his head. He couldn't walk away from the glamour. Reports put him living like a king in Mexico, shielded by the Sinaloa cartel and convinced no one could touch him. He was finally living the high life he'd always envied back when he was just an athlete on the sidelines. His portfolio included scattered estates and a fleet of premium motorbikes, bespoke rides, and the terrified reverence reserved for someone commanding a billion-dollar empire. However, hubris was the crack in his armor. He couldn't just vanish into the shadows. He craved the recognition, needing the world to see the power he wielded. He kept the lines open with his crew, calling the shots and carrying on as if the law didn't apply to him. Meanwhile, the feds were quietly mapping his wealth, piecing together the financial skeleton of his syndicate for months. The hammer dropped in December 2024, when Mexican forces raided and impounded his beloved bike fleet. We're talking 62 bikes estimated at $40 million, plus a custom Mercedes-Benz ringing in at $14 million, alongside a stash of narcotics including cocaine, meth, and fentanyl, fine art, and 2 Olympic medals souvenirs from a life he'd left behind. But this raid wasn't just a cash grab. It was an intel goldmine, offering up vital clues on where he was hiding, who he was with, and how he moved. Yet, the fatal error wasn't the bling. It was the digital trail he left behind. Even as a global fugitive with a massive target on his back, he couldn't help but stay plugged in, chatting with his operatives through encrypted apps he thought were secure. FBI Director Kash Patel later disclosed that Wedding relied on Threema and similar tech, convinced the cartel's shield and encryption made him invisible. But as any expert knows, even locked chats leave breadcrumbs for elite cyber detectives to sniff out. Then came the night of January 22, 2026. That's when Ryan Wedding's decade of dodging the law finally hit a wall, thanks to a massive global takedown. In tight collaboration with Mexican officials and the DEA, the Bureau had been stalking him for weeks. That bike raid back in December gave them the roadmap they needed to pin him down. Crucially, it shook him up, forcing him to make mistakes as he scrambled to adjust his routine. Bringing him in wasn't luck. It was the climax of months of deep surveillance and cross-border teamwork. Ambassador Ron Johnson, operating out of the new diplomatic compound in Mexico, had marked Wedding as target number 1 from day 1 on the job. Director Kash Patel stepped up to the mic, dropping the curtain on the true scale of this massive manhunt. It was a surgical, intel-heavy operation targeting the heart of Wedding's global syndicate, an empire that turned Los Angeles into its personal distribution hub. The bust was historic. We are talking over 2,300 kilograms of coke, 44 kilograms of meth, 44 kilograms of fentanyl, 8 guns, and over $55 million in seized assets. The stats are mind-blowing, yet they are just a drop in the bucket compared to what Wedding moved over the years. They caught him slipping right outside Mexico City, a clean grab that proves the Mexican squads know their business. Authorities did not waste a second, flying him straight to Ontario International Airport, touching down at 7:53 in the evening. Fresh from the capture, the guy who once wore the maple leaf on the Olympic slopes is now in a cell, staring down a life sentence for taking lives, silencing witnesses, washing dirty money, and moving weight on a massive international level. Ryan Wedding's fall marks the death of a billion-dollar machine that spread terror all across North America. But let's be honest, the scars he left on the world will last way longer than any prison term. The human toll of this empire is incalculable. Families ripped apart by senseless violence, neighborhoods drowning in product, young lives completely derailed by the nightmare of addiction. And for what? Because an Olympian decided his craving for power and cash outweighed human life. Yaspit Sadhu, who survived taking 13 bullets in a mistaken identity hit, still hears her mother's screams daily. Her words were hauntingly simple. "I can never forget that." She knows Wedding finally has to face his karma. Dismantling this network meant dragging 36 people in handcuffs across multiple different countries. The Treasury came down hard, sanctioning 19 individuals, with Wedding right at the top of the list. Feds seized mountains of drugs, cash, weapons, luxury whips, bikes, art, and jewels worth tens of millions. But look past the loot. Wedding Saga is really about the dark choices people make and the heavy price they pay. He had it all: Olympic glory, a supportive family, raw talent, and golden opportunities most only dream of. He was born with a silver spoon, had the resources, and the brains to win big in the legitimate world. Yet, he picked a lane that led straight to violence, ruin, and his ultimate destruction. It is a grim warning of how fast you can crash when you break bad. It is also a lesson on how ego and comfort can be the fatal flaw for even the most high-level operators. From the snowy peaks to the FBI's most wanted, Ryan Wedding proves nobody is untouchable. No matter how far they run or who protects them, comfort was his enemy, arrogance was his trap, and his decisions did not just end his life, but wrecked countless others too. If you want more deep dives into the fall of the high and mighty, smash that subscribe button and ring the bell. Until the next one, watch your back out there. The story of Ryan Wedding is a powerful reminder that talent and opportunity alone do not define a person's legacy. Character does. Once celebrated as an Olympic athlete at the 2002 Winter Olympics, he had everything many people dream of: recognition, national pride, and a future filled with possibility. Yet, the desire for fast money, luxury, and power slowly pulled him away from the values that once made him a role model. What makes this story tragic is not just the crimes, but the wasted potential, discipline, courage, and determination qualities that help athletes reach the Olympics can also build meaningful careers and inspire millions. But when those same traits are guided by greed and arrogance, they can lead someone down a dangerous path. The lesson here is clear: success is not measured by wealth or power, but by integrity and responsibility. Every choice we make builds the direction of our life. One wrong decision may seem small at first, but repeated over time, it can destroy everything we worked for. Young people especially should remember this: true greatness comes from staying grounded, respecting the law, and using your talents to uplift others. Fame may fade and money may disappear, but a life built on honesty and purpose will always stand the test of time.